We have a three-part question around the Abra Kadabra process, and I want to try to give an answer to every part. That's a good answer. The first part is, this is really uncomfortable and I don't even really want to do it because I don't like the feeling I have when I'm doing this work, especially before the forgiveness. Sure. And the second part of the question is, once I do the forgiveness process and I'm in the wake of that forgiveness and I'm coming through the conception phase and creating this statement, finding these words that are my new declaration, I'm not sure they're the right words or the best words. And then the third thing is, man, there's a lot of judgments that I've listed out. That's a huge inventory. This is a lot of work to get through. I feel like I'm never going to get to move on and get to the next part of this program and progress in the course. Okay, so let's take them one at a time. The first one, maybe the most important one here, is not wanting to do it because it's uncomfortable. So I want to say two different things to this. The first is kind of like maybe the obvious piece, but like, it is the uncomfortable work that's the most worth doing, right? And so I don't want to take that away. I don't want to try to make it like, oh, don't worry, it doesn't have to be uncomfortable, or there's an easy way to do it, or there's a more comfortable way to do it. I want to have you get that, like, really facing our shadow, facing our judgment, feeling the heat of it, like that is part and parcel to transmutation. The alchemical process involves heat. And so instead of trying to make you think, oh, it can be easy and it can be comfortable, I actually want to inspire you and turn you on to the experience of discomfort. So one of the things you might want to look at is, what is the story that you have about your relationship to discomfort? Are you comfortable being uncomfortable? Are you uncomfortable being uncomfortable? And those are real things. It's not just words. I'm not just putting the same word together in different ways. There's actually a real experience of being comfortable with discomfort. Like, take it out of the emotional and put it in just the pure physical, and think about like doing an exercise, like for me, sit-ups was the thing that I used to be very uncomfortable with, the discomfort of sit-ups, and so I would avoid them. And then I realized that my relationship to that discomfort was what was having me not do them. And I created a way of being comfortable with the discomfort of the feeling in my belly while doing the sit-ups. And then it was no longer something that I was avoiding anymore, and it was still uncomfortable. So the same thing can happen in our relationship to emotional discomfort. The narrative that we have about our relationship to emotional discomfort is a big part of how we relate to that discomfort. So what if you could create a way of being in relationship to your discomfort that you were comfortable with it, meaning you were welcoming of it, you were okay to be this uncomfortable. And it may be as simple as trying on a narrative of like, I actually like this feeling. I like feeling uncomfortable when I'm doing that. One of the things I've shared before around why I feel comfortable doing things that are uncomfortable is because I actually get pleasure from the being present with the pain. And the pleasure is the knowing that I'm doing something that's for my growth, the immediate reward of the identification with myself as somebody who is willing to face discomfort. And there's a pleasure in that. There's a pleasure in knowing that I am the kind of person who is willing to sit in the heat, to face the fire, to face the discomfort, and to be with it. So building up a narrative and identity around your relationship to discomfort is a really important part of being able to do this kind of work, to do shadow work, to do, to face your judgments, and to, whether it's going through forgiveness or something else. So sorry to not take the pain away, but I think we can take the suffering away if we're willing to keep the pain and see how part and parcel it is to our liberation. Okay, so and the second one around, are the words that I'm coming up with, that I'm finding, that I'm hearing, that I'm conceiving in the wake of this forgiveness, the right words? Now, I do talk about this in the Creating Being course somewhere, and I've probably mentioned it also in the FAQs, but I'll say it again here so you don't have to go hunting for it. There are no right words, right? This is where you get to practice locating the seat of your agency. When you go into spiritual work or psychological work, it is very easy to fall into the trap of, am I getting it right? Am I doing it right in the way the process was designed, or the way I'm meant to do it? Or am I doing it right in the eyes of God? And those aren't non-useful questions. There's certainly value in asking those questions to connect you to your divine, to connect you to the efficacy of the process as it was designed and used by other people. Good question. Until that question becomes an obstacle. So is this question serving me, or am I serving the question? The moment I'm serving the question is when I start saying that I couldn't possibly know whether or not this is good enough for me. I could only know whether or not somebody said I'm doing it well enough or I'm doing all the right things. And so when it starts to become an obstacle to you even doing the work, then I would say asking that question is not useful anymore. You actually want to start to move your agency into deciding that actually that's good. That's good for me. I'm going to use that, right? And here's the other thing. Actually, maybe more specific. I'm going to decide that I am doing the process right, and these are the right words. It's just a flip from the question to a decision. And the reason that's important is because this is going to tie into the answer to the third part of the question. One of the things that I want you to create while you're doing this work, while you're here studying with me, learning with me, is a level of agency inside yourself around your own internal processes and your measure for your own efficacy. So I want you to be the ones deciding whether you're doing things right, how effective they are, whether you're doing it enough, right? To lead us into the next question. Like all of these questions about how am I doing it, should I be doing it differently? Yes, they're useful, but only to a point. You have to actually sit in the driver's seat and be like, I'm doing it right, I'm doing it effectively, and I'm going to do this much of it. Okay? And that the reason I want that for you is because you sitting in that seat of agency for your own internal experience, that's you being in your seat of power. And so all of this is often a wax on, wax off thing, like to use the Mr. Miyagi Karate Kid thing. Like it looks like I'm teaching you how to wax a car by giving you this forgiveness process, but what I'm doing is I'm inadvertently bringing you into a place of agency within yourself. So let me bring that to the third part of the question, which was, man, there's a lot of this stuff to get through. How am I ever going to get on this piece of the course? So the first thing I would say is, once you have those first two things handled, the process will actually go faster. You'll be able to move through these quicker. And some of them will be like, you sit down, you're like, oh, it's familiar, I'm free, I'm good, I already know what the declaration is, boom, 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 and I move on. A lot of the ones that are worded similarly, I say be present with it long enough. I forgive myself for judging myself as really feel it and be like, yep, I've got that one, I'm good. And how do I know if I really did that one? Don't start asking the questions that take you out of your power. Ask from curiosity, don't ask from doubt and hesitancy. And so that is going to strengthen your agency. So those first two things are going to help you to go faster through this work. That's the other first thing. And this isn't something to get through. Like, this is it. This practice is a practice that will change you for the rest of your life. In fact, you could spend the next 3 months doing this, and it's only going to make you stronger at loving yourself. This is literally a practice in self-loving, creating a conscious way of being in relationship with yourself psychologically and spiritually that witnesses judgment, forgives it, and creates love. So the more times you do this, you're going to become more proficient in a habituated pattern of meeting self-judgment with forgiveness. So it's like, it would be the part 3 of the question is kind of like if you do yoga, right? It's kind of like, which I know a lot of people do, and you listening, if you do yoga and you go to a yoga session, you'd be like, oh my God, like how many downward dogs are there going to be in this yoga? Like I've been doing downward dogs like every class. When are we going to get on to the next thing? It's like, no, the downward dog, the movement, the vinyasa, the flow, that's the thing. That's the practice. And so the more you do it, the deeper it takes you. Okay, so I want to change the frame on this as something to get through so you can get to the declarations, to be like, the declarations are like the carrot on a stick that pull you into the practice. Yes, there's fruitfulness to the declarations themselves as well, because we're going to use those as a practice to cultivate being, but they're actually not the most powerful and important part of a forgiveness practice. They're like the bonus. The real fruit is the capacity that you create through the practice of being in relationship with yourself in a way that is forgiving and loving. And you've got this big list, and you've got all these opportunities, each one of these things, an opportunity to practice this. And guess what? When you do get to the end, guess what? There's going to be more. Your mind will come up with more judgments, and you'll get to practice them. So there's enough here to get you up to like a certain belt level in this, so that you have chops with it and you have unconscious habit and conditioning, so that it becomes available to you automatically. That's the trick. I'm kind of giving away the trick, but hopefully sometimes when I tell you the trick, the point of doing all this is that it cultivates a capacity in you. Then you're like, oh, I'm not just trying to get the outcomes of these. This is actually growing in me a capacity and ability and that I will have for the rest of my life, and it will help me really get this really deeply. Okay, cool, now I want to spend the time doing these. Now I see the fruit of that labor is much more than the outcomes of the statements, but the experience and the capacity it builds in me. So there you go. Really great question. I hope the answers were clear. If you have any follow-up questions, let me know. Lots of love and bye for now.